We'll get started here with the CX leaders and a CX career professional panel here. So really excited about this one. I mentioned this last year at CXPS. The fastest growing trend in business is the rise of the CX professional as a dedicated title. So we've got 4 professionals up here who have CX in their title, and we're going to just have a conversation with them. Get your QR codes ready or go to polev.com and join so that you can be asking your questions as we go through the panel. We've got about 30 minutes of questions prepared, and we got an hour, so we're definitely leaning on you guys for some of those questions. So get ready for that. And we're going to start out here with just some introductions. So if each of you would just briefly introduce yourself, your company, your title, and just kind of what's your CX story?
I'll start. I am Mallory, Director of Customer Experience at Power Design. So we are a national multi-trade contractor and design firm. I completely fell into CX. We started doing it without knowing there was a name. And I think that's pretty similar to everybody, right? We all are customer service. We all want happy customers. And before we knew it, we realized that we had a whole CX program, learned about it, and started fine-tuning and formalizing the department.
Great. I'm Carl Winstead with Klein Design Associates. We're a Raleigh and Charlotte-based architecture firm, land planning and interiors. And I've been with the firm 5 years, and I actually get to wear 3 titles. They are partner, architect, and CXO, and you can guess which one is the most current and newest is CXO. And in our office, as we developed what the need for that or what we thought the need was, for us, CXO really is a little bit of everything. It is client experience, it's the staff experience, and it's a little piece of business development. So it's got some interesting legs and tentacles to it.
All right, thank you. Sid?
Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody. Sid Abrams. I am Client Experience Officer at Nonprofit HR. We are a national professional services firm that does HR consulting for social impact organizations, so nonprofits, associations, and foundations. I'm an HR guy by background and by education and training. Have been with this firm for about 15 years and was asked about October of last year to take on a CXO role, not knowing what CX was. So it's been quite a learning journey for the past 6 months, and I'm excited to share more about that with you all this afternoon.
And I'm Dan Herbener. I work for Benish Law. We're a business law firm located out of Cleveland, Ohio. 350 attorneys. I know I said this earlier, but I work as a CX analyst there. I had no background in CX either when I first started. It was a situation where I was a business development specialist, went to our CMO, Gene, and just said, hey, I kind of want to get more involved with the client side, client development, and then a couple weeks later, this position was kind of just handed to me. So it's been an interesting ride, but happy to be here.
Great. And so each of you came into this a little bit differently, and you're all first-generation CX leaders in your first official CX role. So tell me a little bit more about your background in CX, and though some of you are new to this, you didn't just fall into this. You had some precursors that set you up for success in CX. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I actually came from the operations side of our business. I was in project management for a while. I worked for the director of operations at the time. So I got to get very hands-on with budgets, how our operations work, the processes, etc. I actually left the company. I had to move, so I relocated. The owner of the company was not able to go to the job sites anymore himself, but he's very passionate about the job. You know, if it was up to him, he would go to every job and check in with the clients. So they asked if I would step in and start just calling our clients, see how we're doing. That's where we started with CX, and before we knew it, those turned into interviews, and we were doing them on every project. And that feedback has been part of our culture now for 7 years.
Right.
Major part.
you may have heard the song "The Long and Winding Road." You know, for almost 25 years, I had my own firm here in the Triangle area, a small firm. But one of the pieces of work, and there I was the sort of the chief officer of everything, and it was everything from being on the boards, drawing, designing, meeting with clients, invoicing, marketing, all of that. So years of kind of just grueling through everything, and then one of the things I developed an interest in was Greek housing, which may sound kind of odd. But what I found myself doing is I was spending a lot of time with Greek organizations on college campuses, really kind of navigating bureaucracy of a college campus, bureaucracy of an organization, emotions of an alumni group. So all kinds of things, and I realized that I was kind of developing this interest in sort of like navigating all of that. That was almost becoming as much fun as doing the building design part. And that led me to really kind of getting in a bunch of leadership reading, and that's the only formal training I've had. I had this opportunity literally 5 years ago to basically leave my own firm but join as a partner with this larger group. And as we were looking at our leadership and our strategy for moving on with organization, we really kind of developed this role, and you know, we're learning it, and you know, but my training, I'm young in my journey, so.
Right.
Great. I think if there is an ideal path that for anybody to take, I think I took it. So I started off at Nonprofit HR as a senior consultant doing 100% client-facing work. Ended up running that team for about 7 years, and then shifted into business development. So spent about 2.5 years in the business development side. So really touching all the various touch points that a client would have through the life cycle. What I didn't realize, and in hindsight looking back, was I kind of started a client experience program about 4 years ago. We called it QoS, so quality of service. And after a project was done, we had this super janky SurveyMonkey survey that we would send out to clients and just get a sense for how we did. And we used that data to, you know, kind of learn about the experience, but it was very in an informal way. There was no kind of scientific methodology to it, but recognizing that we did do a little bit of CX a few years back. So having the perspective of being on the client side, doing the client work, and then moving into business development, I thought is kind of an ideal path to be able to see all sides of that client life cycle and moving into this kind of now formal CX operation.
Right.
I think for me, certainly the reason why my role was created is twofold. I didn't have any CX background. I had worked in corporate communications for a metals and manufacturing company before I joined Benish as a business development specialist. So I'd seen some of the pitch and proposal work that we'd done. But our firm was growing like crazy at the beginning of the pandemic for whatever reason. There was just a higher demand for legal services. So between that, and then we also had our client assessment program. We had all these key client account pipelines, and we had done the baseline survey with Client Savvy. So we had all of these client feedback efforts going on at once, and we were growing like crazy. So it was kind of the idea that we need somebody to come in and organize all of this stuff and sort of be the liaison for all the client experience, client feedback, client service efforts that we're putting forward. So it really was kind of right place at the right time, but here I am, happy to be here.
Right. And talking to each of you before this, you all have some projects, some CX initiatives in flight. I'm sure the audience would love to hear what you're working on right now, what you're striving towards, and maybe what's coming up next.
I take for granted, I was talking about this earlier, is living in this world, I tend to think about all of the things we're not doing yet. I know there's a lot of people in here who say that, you're like, oh, we want more, right? Oh, I wish we could do that. I wish we could put that in place. I had to sit back while I was here and say, holy, like, we're actually doing a lot of things right. We have a lot of these in place. We have the framework and the structure. We have everywhere from, if it's new business or maintaining the relationships, there's processes. We have events. We host these massive tours, which are huge, huge sellers. We have clients, vendors now coming in to visit our facilities. Our feedback program is part of every project. Every project team will see that feedback. So I interviewed Dan over there about how his experience with our company went. That feedback gets summarized, lessons learned, gets sent to the entire company. The owner himself will call you. If it's not great, there's a jet going out tomorrow to fix that relationship before it gets too bad. That's the biggest one we have. And then, let's see, we're now starting to branch out into our different disciplines. So we're starting our engineering feedback surveys, system surveys, different pieces of work, focusing more on that.
I would say if anybody in the room hasn't started a CX program or you're really new to it, don't be afraid of it and be patient. I think one of my biggest projects right now is really education. It's education for myself, so this is a great event. So thank you for all that I'm learning here. But I think it's an education for the firm. I think especially in a setting where you're used to providing professional services, you know how to provide those, right? You know how to put a billing together. You know how to project management, how to stay on a budget, how to see problems in the field. You know all that, and that's all familiar territory. And you can talk that all day long, and everybody in the room nods their head, yeah, I got it. And understanding that CX is something different, and it is different than just marketing. So one of my projects right now is really, I've started a weekly kind of a conversation at a meeting that we have with all the partners and team leaders, where we're just discussing topics. I mean, we're actually starting to use your card deck as a way just to get people to start thinking about it. And then we're working with sort of client. Our goal is really in the early fall to start doing listening tours. So we're starting to build some database and do that together. But again, I think for us right now, our biggest thing is it's educating ourselves and getting people to start thinking about CX in a way that they're so used to thinking about everything else.
Right.
Yeah, I would concur with a lot of that around the education. As you can imagine, we are fairly early in our CX journey. So we have just concluded about 30 days ago our first baseline survey with Client Savvy. We've got that data. We've now done some initial assessment of it. We're ready to have our onboarding towards the end of this month. So we'll be kind of designing now that strategy and really working on education. So one of the interesting things that we've done is we're a fully remote organization of about 130 staff. And we have biweekly staff meetings. We do a half an hour Zoom calls. And one of the things we do in each of those calls is we always have 1 or 2 slides that are dedicated to CX, right? So it's a little piece of education, it's data sharing, it's kind of terms and definitions, it's what are the project plans that we have coming up. So it's a lot of education. It's trying to socialize within the organization what this new term is, what does it mean, why should it not be scary to you, trying to debunk some of the myths out there that people may have about it. So it's about education, but we're early in our journey. We'll be doing client listening tours coming up here soon and really putting in the hard work to understand the current perceptions and experiences of our clients that will help inform and shape our strategy and then tactics over the next 6 to 24 months.
Right.
Sure. So obviously I mentioned a few that we have going on a little bit earlier during my talk about our client assessment program. I mean, that takes up a good amount of our time to begin with. Trying to launch quarterly feedback surveys with Client Savvy, also end and mid-matter check-ins. But the more that we try and launch these pilot projects and I have discussions with some senior leadership, the more I feel the need that we have to sort of go back and establish what those building blocks are for our CX program. So it goes back to what you guys were talking about with education, showing the attorneys that what client experience is in the first place and how valuable it can be to our business, I think is the most important step for us right now. We'll continue to try and collect feedback through these different efforts, but the more we can show that business value, I think the easier it will be to start to get some of these projects off the ground.
Right. Right. Well, thank you guys.
I'm going to chime in on that because we did not do a great job with that when we first started. So getting on a common language I would recommend that to anybody. Otherwise, you will sit there and have a conversation about CX, and what does that mean? Somebody's talking about an event, someone's talking about feedback, so what you guys are doing, I wish we did more up front, because now we're backtracking and now trying to push it through.
Good lesson learned. All right. I got one question for each of you, and of course anyone else can color commentate, but Sid, talk to me about the business driver behind why nonprofit HR created the CXO role and launched on a CX program.
Absolutely. So our firm, we've been around 23 years. I've been here for about 15 of those 23 years. We were 6 employees when I started. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were like 50, 51, and we're 130 today. So that the growth for the first 20 years of our firm was incredibly intentional, managed, and done in a very high quality way. We were able to really ensure high level quality experiences, and that led to high retention and referrals and whatnot. Over the course of the pandemic, as we almost tripled in size, we saw a resulting kind of decrease in client quality, right? It was harder to maintain that level of quality through that rapid growth period. So we started to see slippage in terms of client renewals and client referrals and just some of the feedback that came back, which was very much, things that could be corrected with more intentionality around training and providing the right level of expectations and accountabilities for anybody who was client facing. So at the end of last year, we decided to do a little bit of a reorganization, and essentially we reorganized our leadership and our firm around 3 pillars. We retitled our head of HR as our head of employee experience. I wear the hat of head of client experience, and we have our CFO. And what we've done is essentially any new initiative within the firm, unless it furthers the goals of EX, CX, or financial impact, we don't do it. So that's now the filter through which any new initiative, any new project, any new idea is put through. And it all kind of resulted out of this growth, which spurred kind of the need to really reevaluate and define what are the set of expectations, how do we engage with clients, and then making sure we kind of get back to that level of excellence that was our hallmark for the first 20 years.
Right. Carl, you have 3 titles. So as you're transitioning into the CXO, how did you or how are you letting go of the old titles? How are you managing wearing those multiple hats?
Well, you're looking at the worst person right here who gets in the way of all of that. Anybody, and that's a good question, because I think anybody who has sort of moved from one role to another, you sort of spend time with what you know and what you're used to doing. That's the easy part. And I think for me personally, as a person trained as an architect, I have spent my whole career designing buildings and seeing them constructed. And that's part of how I value my day. That's how I know I've put in a good day's work. And so sort of shifting from not being in the day-to-day design and working has been kind of a difficult thing. I'm lucky that our leadership, and I'm lucky to be part of the ownership, so we helped create this. So we have the backing that, yes, Carl, you need to get out of projects. But I have clients who still think that I'm their go-to person. I got a call here just yesterday that we have a project manager that's leaving, and now I'm going to have to inherit. So it's hard to do it, but you have to. You really have to. And I've had to learn how to say no. Tell a client that I know we've worked together for 10, 15 years. I'm not leaving you. I'm putting you in good hands. I'm here, but I'm here in a different role to continue for you to still have that positive feeling about your project. But it's difficult. But if you don't, you will spend your days still in the trap.
Yeah. Well, as someone myself who left architecture to go do CX, I can certainly relate to the idea of sitting back at the end of the day and wondering, what did I actually accomplish? Because there's no lines on a piece of paper. And Dan, you shared something in our conversation leading up to this. How do you look back and measure what you've done, what you've accomplished, and feel like that was a good day's work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been one of the hardest parts of sort of shifting my mentality of what my role is, because just, from a personal perspective, I'm someone who likes to check boxes, like to, task-oriented, get things done, on to the next. But obviously with CX, it's not a box that you can check. I mean, if you have clients, you have client experience, right? So right now it's been difficult since we're early in the process to correlate the quantitative, revenue growth, client retention, things of that nature with the qualitative, the stories that we hear about, we solved X problem for X client and it had X outcome. There have been a few of those stories, but I think for me, the mentality shift has been, it's a law firm, they're slow to make changes. If they're even considering some of the projects that we're trying to get off the ground here, that's successful to me. So certainly difficult, certainly a mind shift, but sometimes you just have to step back and understand that some of these companies move at a glacier's pace, and the fact that you're chipping away at all is progress and is success.
Yeah, my co-founding partner often said it's like pushing a mule up a ladder, and I don't think there's a better analogy sometimes for getting CX done. You talked about some of the measurable results and the impacts that CX is having. So, Mel, that's something you talked about, was how do you get funding, how do you get resources? We're in organizations where time is money, and even though we all talk about value-based pricing and everything else, you talk about trying to train 100 attorneys on CX, and people are thinking that's, $600 an hour times 100 attorneys times 4 hours, and it's just hard to get out of that mindset. So how do you get resources to do this?
I leverage the resources that are already existing. Because again, customer service isn't new. Your teams already have that mindset. So going to find your internal networks, and it's finding who's going to, one, be your promoter. So take that philosophy, right? Go look for your raving fans. Go find the people who will help you get to the buy-in that you need. So maybe it's not directly your supervisor. Maybe it's going to the operations manager and saying, how would I be able to help you achieve your goals? That person can then also be your advocate and push for the change that you're looking for. And then a lot of times, again, it's not budget. Sometimes you don't need it. That was a lesson I had to learn. I don't have to do everything new. Sometimes it's tweaking an existing process, changing. We have a team of executive representatives that are really our relationship managers at the higher level. Sometimes it's as simple as asking them to just check a box, so now I have that data point. They're already having the conversations. How do I leverage that information?
Great. All right. And I see some questions are coming in, so this is wonderful. I know those might be a bit hard to read, so I've got them up here. I'm not like browsing Facebook, guys. I'm reading your questions here. So top voted question right now. What tips do you have for someone trying to lead CX from the wrong seat in the organization?
Can I ask why it's the wrong seat?
That's a good question. So maybe leading from the middle. A non-CX title. Maybe executive leadership isn't drinking the CX Kool-Aid yet, but you are.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in on this one because I am far from an executive at my firm here. But certainly that's a challenge. I'm the only person in our organization who has CX in their title. I was lucky enough that our chief strategy officer and our CMO were completely bought in on client experience as something that we needed. I think that, when I came here last year, I really didn't know a lot about CX, but the more that I went to the different programs and things, it makes so much sense, right? It's just, you have to have somebody who can actually communicate what CX actually is and how you can put it into practice. So I think the more that you can just continually educate yourself on what CX is and become really adequate at communicating it to leadership, I think that it's just absolutely a no-brainer, especially for professional services firms. I mean, we were talking about, there's a bunch of law firms that can do the exact same work that our lawyers can do. Don't tell our lawyers that I said that. But a differentiator is the client experience. If you give the client a great experience, then they're going to want to buy from you in the first place, and they're going to want to keep buying from you. So that's my perspective.
I think one of the arguments that we had too is that it's really, really simple, right? Especially as a professional services firm, you only have two resources that you get to work with. It's your people, your staff, and it's your clients. And if you lose or mess up either one of those, then you have no business. It cannot function without either one of those resources. And so I think that was for us as a really good point of saying there is no really way to avoid this. It doesn't make business sense. We need to pay attention and focus and make both of those things really important, because we don't have a business and paychecks with either one of them awry.
All right.
And then the only thing I would add to it is use the data that you either can capture or have already captured to support those decisions and to get those folks who do have decision-making power to put the data in their hands. So for example, Blake talked yesterday about the CX gap, right? About the difference between what CEOs' perceptions were and what their clients' realities were, right? It was very stark. Or are you capturing any data from your clients during or after engagements to support the investment in CX? And I think, as you all talked about, it's not hard stuff, right? It just takes the intentionality and the commitment to start small, doing things like some of the tips that Andrea had shared yesterday and today about, saying thank you and the things that don't cost anything. Start with some of those low cost or no cost strategies, get some momentum, and then you can kind of use that to make the business case for, okay, can I get a small budget? Now can I grow that, so on and so forth.
I want to chime in on that too, because there is my team, we were very, very tiny. It was me and one other person interviewing every single project 4 times. So what we did is we created a lot of hype around what we do. So, and beyond, again, the whole company sees our results. That's great. We celebrate these big wins as an organization. But as we were losing some of that visibility because we became very stable in the organization, we were getting great feedback, attention started to focus somewhere else in the organization. We were feeling a little left behind. So we went on an intentional campaign of activities. We were posting and raving about certain employees who have gone above and beyond. We were going to them and thanking them. We were asking them how they did it. Then they tell you the rest of the story that, oh yeah, I did this. That person came in and guess what we're doing next week? Awesome. Now that person is proud of what they did. They're more intentional of what they're doing. And so we actually did a grassroots spreading of energy towards it. And that helped us a lot, really get that momentum and buy-in back in.
Right. There's some really good questions here. Let's see, the other one that's been upvoted a couple times. Can you describe performance metrics and utilization expectations for your CX staff? Yeah, it always comes back to utilization, doesn't it?
No. If you know the answer.
So in our firm, we don't even use that word anymore. It's just called the dirty U word, right? I think there's been so much over-focus on utilization that it really has lost its effectiveness. So for us, what we've done is we have brought our resource and project planning team into the CX kind of world, and ensuring that as we're building out portfolios and we are setting up new projects and building projects teams, that instead of focusing on utilization, which of course is a backwards looking metric, we're really looking at what is the optimal number of clients or hours somebody can have that can support strong client experience, right? So we're driving it from the CX perspective as opposed to solely the utilization perspective. Now, we are a fairly small firm, so we don't have some of the same, perhaps, pressures that others may have from a billable time perspective. But for us, it's been about shifting the conversation solely from numerically driven to more qualitatively driven. And then as we are getting feedback from clients, whereas there is perhaps some constructive feedback, we're not using it in a punitive way. We are using it to bring in our EX team, and how are we going to create learning opportunities for staff who may have, areas for development. So we had, as an example, during our client listening, one of our listening conversations as a follow-up to the baseline survey, a client had a particularly not a great experience with one of our consultants in terms of their engagement with some candidates that they were working with. So what we ended up doing was meeting with the head of that division and bringing in our EX liaisons and identifying, we use a lot of LinkedIn Learning, so what are some of the learning journeys that we can create for her within that platform to be able to support growth and development towards getting up to that CX kind of place of excellence. We haven't yet defined what those are. We're still early in that journey. But in the meantime, we were using kind of that data to drive qualitative improvement.
Very cool. All right. What roles in your organization support CX and EX efforts, and what future roles do you plan to add?
I'd like to argue that they all do, right? How we interact with each other is going to impact it all. Everybody has a customer where you work, but so roles specifically, we do have a executive representative team. Again, those are the relationship drivers at the higher level. We've got our feedback team. We also have an engagement team. The engagement team is the one who is creating the events and those special touch points with the clients on an individual level or at a larger level. And then I love how you renamed your HR department. We also have done that too. So our entire HR department is actually called The Source, which means that they are the source for everything. And we have made it so if you have a question, if I don't know where my my credit card is, I could just email that account and they will help me. They will take care of it. So in that sense, we really do have a corporate culture of everybody is in a CX position or an EX position. We're all responsible for the experience.
I know we're young in our development, but I would say that for me, my biggest support is coming from my partners, but also our director of marketing and our director of HR. I mean, those are right now the key people that are really kind of working with me specifically. I think what I have begun to realize and learn, especially this conference, is that we do need, one person really can't continue to do all this for 130 people and then multiple offices, and the separation of EX and CX probably is in there somewhere.
And I actually subscribe to Mallory's thinking that it is everyone. And part of the education efforts that we're planning on doing moving forward is not only educating attorneys and senior leadership on why it's important, why it's good for the business, is educating the entire staff on how it is that their efforts, no matter if they're client-facing or not, how they affect the client experience and how it rolls back up. So my function falls underneath the marketing and BD team. Our CMO and our director of business development are really the only two that are like in the weeds with me in our CX efforts. But like I said, I mean, it's across the board. Every single position in the firm really impacts CX.
Yeah, one story from my experience, I was doing a CX piece as part of one firm's 2-day strategic planning. So I got to see a whole lot of their stuff. And when their director of IT, when it got to his time, he was going over their technology plan for the year, and they needed to do a whole bunch of laptop replacements. And he goes, yeah, it was a design firm, so big CAD workstations, these like 12-pound massive laptops. And he goes, yeah, this is probably the best thing for like running CAD, but I was thinking about it. Every time I walk by the conference room and I see these screens up between our people and our clients, it just feels like there's a wall between. So I found this thin and light, and the screen folds all the way down, and it's viewable from all angles, and so we can put our drawings in this collaborative workspace, and it's 10-point multi-touch, so your clients can touch that and zoom in and out too. So that's an organization where everybody, director of IT, what does he have to do with CX? Well, completely changed how they ran their client meetings just with a piece of technology. So those are the kinds of things to be looking for.
If somebody, I actually have to add in a correction too, because if somebody does happen to watch this, we do have a people experience director as well, who lives within the HR function, and then also an IT director of customer experience. So his goal is to make sure that any interaction with our IT department is seamless, because we're all leaving happy, we're not frustrated. So in that sense, so we have the pieces in play to make sure everyone is thinking the same way.
Right.
Missed that.
So another great idea, if you're not large enough to have formal CX roles, each one of those functions in the business, find a CX champion for IT, a CX champion for HR, a CX champion for invoicing, all those different pieces. That can be a great way to start sourcing a more collaborative approach towards CX. Question here, what resources would you recommend for someone who is trying to learn about CX? Podcasts, newsletters, books, anything along those lines?
So when I set on my learning journey to kind of identify what is CX and kind of become the expert at it overnight, doing kind of online searching, did not find a lot of books on CX that related specifically into professional services, right? A lot would focus on retail or call centers. But one book that I did find that I read, which was very helpful, it was called Do B2B Better by Jim Tincher, I believe is his name. And it's specifically for B2B organizations in professional services. So it was very germane to us. Now, in hindsight, I think it was like a 300 level book that was probably not the right one to read first. So I'm going to go back and read that again. But that was a great one. One I'm in the middle of reading right now is called Inside Out, which is a very kind of good fundamental book around kind of the CX paradigm and just really understanding it at a fundamental level.
Right.
Ryan, architects only read books with pictures, so I haven't found anything yet.
I don't really have any book recommendations, but the resources that I've leaned on the most are like folks that I've met here. I mean, I constantly am reaching out to people like, hey, I saw that you're doing this, or I had this idea. Can we sit down for a half an hour and talk about it? And there's a few people where I just have standing meetings bi-monthly or monthly, whatever, just to talk about what we're working on, because it's not the most common thing that you run into CX professionals. So to be here in this community and then find people you can kind of latch onto and share ideas with, I think that's the most valuable resource.
So on that note, who here would be willing to meet every other month with someone else in the room and talk CX? Raise your hand. Okay, look around. So everyone can find someone to build that peer network. I encourage you to do that. It's a great idea.
I've got Eddie.
All right. Do you have any resources?
I was going to say people. That's something, look around you. We all like talking to each other. We all get really nerdy out about this. I also found recently, though, I would connect with people on LinkedIn. If I would read a page that I liked, an article, I would connect with them, message them, congratulate them on a great job, because I took value from their work. Before you know it, you will be on a 30-minute call. They're there for resources. I have not met anybody in this industry who is not likable or willing to nerd out with you about it.
Absolutely. I have spent the last 19 years finding very cool CX people and reaching out, being like, hey, John Goodman, I saw him speak at a conference, and I was like, you're awesome. Would you come to CXPS? And this is what, your third time, fourth time here? So CX people love talking about CX. So if you find them online, LinkedIn, a great resources there. You guys ready for a tough question from the audience? All right. Carl, you go first. No, I'm kidding. What's your biggest challenge as a CX leader? And to counterbalance that, what has been your biggest success so far?
I just go back, the biggest challenge I think has been myself. Just getting my head and my actions around something that's just different, and there's no roadmap and you went to school and have this background. So my challenge has been myself, and I think it's been making the time for it. But I think, to me, one of the biggest success is starting to see the firm talk about it, and when I find myself being introduced as the CXO, and somebody starts saying a little bit about what they think that is, you start going, okay, well, we're baby steps, but we're starting to see that, and I think to me that is a success.
Right.
I would say the biggest challenge is being disciplined enough about waiting to build your strategy before diving in, with both feet at the tactics level. I think all of us are super excited to make immediate progress and to demonstrate value and return on the investments that our organizations have made. But having that discipline to kind of stay the course, collect the feedback, design the strategy, implement, I think is the biggest challenge. And in terms of success, I think it's something very similar to what you said, Carl, just having people talk about it, and it's part of the conversation now. The fact that we've structured our organization around the CX and EX pillars, the fact that we have CX part of every staff conversation, it begins to socialize it, and eventually, once it's fully socialized, then I think everybody can start to embody it, live it, and breathe it.
Yeah, I would actually echo both of those points. The first being obviously the discipline to not try and start doing a bunch of stuff right away, which is what I did. But I think too, the pace, I know I mentioned this earlier, the pace at which that things move in a law firm, and that this has been, different projects have been adopted. I actually had a discussion with our CMO a couple months ago and was like, I don't feel like anything's really getting done here. She's like, what are you talking about? I feel like there's tons of energy around these CX initiatives, and like you are sitting in these meetings where people are saying that these are great ideas. And it was nice to have that validation to be like, there's actually progress being made here, even if it is slow progress. And I think that dovetails nicely into what I see as the biggest success is that, like you said, people are talking about it. People see the value in it. Maybe some people don't yet, but it seems like there's positive momentum that some of this stuff's going to start getting off the ground, and that we're going to make a positive difference at the firm.
Same, right? Again, I tend to look at, so my biggest challenge is looking at the things I'm not doing yet, because I want to do it all. I want to own it all. I want to participate in it all. I want my hands in everything. And that is a big challenge that I have to work through, is stepping back and knowing that I cannot do it all at once. I've heard a few people say that this week, but the biggest success, I have to say that our culture does live by this philosophy of the customer, right? That it's not a fake thing that we do for a minute and turn it off. It is very genuine. It is very real at all levels. And that, to me, is the biggest pride, right? So our superintendents are out in the field. I get to go to a job site tomorrow right down the street, and that person knows that their feedback's coming up. They're excited to have us do the interview. They're excited to get their feedback and their recognition out to the company of how they've created this raving fan. That is my biggest, that would be mine.
That's awesome. So another tough question here, and I think a good one. How much autonomy do you have in your role regarding decisions to create change?
None.
Managing change is very difficult from our level, right? Because if you're talking about implementing new CX initiatives, again, a lot of them exist, or there's something similar that's existing. If you're looking at taking that feedback and realizing we need to make a process change, at our scale, at the size we are now, it is very difficult for me to know who to go to. Who is the person who can dictate that change? And again, that's back to the network. So we have to be my entire team is constantly networking within our own company, so we know who the right people are to push that down or up.
I feel like I'm blessed in that we have 100% buy-in from our entire senior management team. They understand the importance of it, why we put it in place, and the direct correlation with business results. So, generally speaking, we're not going to get hardly any pushback on the initiatives that we're going to put in place that ultimately are going to be good for business.
Yeah, I would say I have really strong autonomy, and I think one of the nice things is that I'll come back from this conference with a whole list of things, and I'll have an audience that will be willing to listen to it.
Right. So similar question, how important is demonstrating ROI for the CX efforts at your firm, and what is your approach?
It varies for us. Again, it's the philosophy. It's from the top, at the very, very highest level, the owner, the CEO. There is no doubt to him. He founded this company based on relationships. It is in our mission statement, so we don't have the pushback. It is in our nature. It's the next job. It is the next 10 years of work with this client. So as far as requirements or what's expected, it is not as stringent as I believe some people might have when it has to show the technical ROI before you implement change.
I don't think we have a real way of measuring, except right now our language and our discussion is, how much it costs to get a new employee and how much if somebody's disengaged, what that means to the company. Especially in times that we may or may not be facing, what's the importance of holding on to somebody that you already know works well with you, what they expect of you. So while we don't have metrics, we are talking the language of, what it might take if you don't have that.
Right. And it's just a big enough number that it's compelling, even if it's not a hard measured number. People go, oh, I don't want to see that consequence. Yeah. Right. There was a question here, so quick answers from everyone. I think people are trying to contextualize what you're talking about. How big is your firm? So all the way down.
We have about 3,000 employees, and revenue, we are looking at 1.2 billion in job awards last year.
We're 130 people in 2 offices between Raleigh and Charlotte, and do work pretty much in a wide variety of not just the Southeast, but across the country.
We're also 130 employees, headquartered in DC, but 100% remote in probably 30 states.
We are 500 employees, 350 of which are attorneys, 150 staff, headquartered in Cleveland, 8 offices.
Okay. So I thought I'd give you guys an easy one in between the more difficult ones. Sid, this might be a good one for you. You talked about it earlier. Love everyone else's thoughts as well. How do you use CX as a filter for new initiatives?
Yeah. That basically is the filter through which we design on new initiatives. So we've gotten laser focused. Our motto for this year is do less better, and part of that is making sure that any new idea, be it however far-reaching or smart it may be, supports one of the 3 pillars, which is around our client experience, employee experience, and financial impact. If it doesn't fall through one of those 3 buckets, we're just going to defer it or say no altogether. And that has gotten socialized through the organization, and now when we are having employees who have ideas, they're actually coming to say, this is my idea and this is where it falls, or this is how it can support the employee experience, as culture is very important for us, for example. So they've kind of gotten the message very quickly. We're only, actually, gosh, we're already in May already. But, early in the year, it was very early adoption, and it just makes smart business sense, and we're just disciplined about using that rubric, if you will, as we think through any new project or, idea.
So are they bringing you the same kind of decisions and initiatives that they have before, but they're contextualizing it in CX now? Or are you seeing people kind of fake it into CX just to get it approved? What do you...
It's a little bit of the former. It's a little bit of some of the ideas that are driven bottom up. Honestly, I have to use this rubric most often with our CEO, right? When she wants to do something new, she has this great idea, this thing that woke her up at 3 a.m. Well, Lisa, let's talk about this. How does it put through your own rubric? So it's really holding her accountable and our leadership accountable for being disciplined about not following the next great shiny thing along those lines of the EX, finance, and then the do less better.
That is something I want to take home. Like the one, you all have your takeaways. That is something I believe that we could start tomorrow and benefit our entire organization. I love that one.
Right. So there's a lot of people here in the room that don't have CX in their title. I know there's a lot of them who maybe have aspirations to have CX in their title, or there's not a lot of CXOs in the world or in the industry. So as an executive destination, the CXO is certainly a destination point. Some of you are there, some of you are maybe on the journey. What does being CXO mean to you? And if you were somewhere on that journey or giving advice to someone on that journey, what does it take to be a CXO?
I'll jump in. I think there are a lot of traits that you can have that would be really important. I think, being curious, having a sense of humor, being patient. I think all of those are very good traits. I will tell you the one that I think serves me and drives me really is passion. And if I were to say it's passion for people. And I think, helping people get better, helping us as a firm get better, but that also means that our clients have gotten better somehow, and that our staff has gotten better somehow. And I thought, as I looked at sort of my career and this idea of making this big shift, knowing that, well, if I stay just the architect, I can do a building or 2 every year, and that will be my impact on the world. In a position like this, my sphere of influence now is dramatically different. I now can help support 130 people do amazing things. I can help their clients, our clients, do amazing things. And again, it really goes back to it's just a passion of watching people get better and accomplish things. So for me, that's one of my driving things I think is important.
Yeah, and I would echo that. And it's about the ability to influence your employees and your clients and your business, right? So it is having that ability to do that. But I would argue, even if you don't have C in your title or CX in your title, everybody within your organization can be their own chief of client experience, right? Whether you're in marketing and building your website, whether you're in business development, whether you're in resource project planning or in service delivery or in billing and invoicing or contracts, everybody touches your clients, right? Either directly or indirectly. Everybody can impact and touch your employees directly or indirectly. So having the CX mindset is almost more important than having a CX title. And if you have the ability to influence and lead from within your organization, I think ultimately you might drive your own success towards that CX title at some point.
Any thoughts? All right. Before I started Client Savvy, I was working at an architecture firm, and my boss would have an executive coach come in once a month and spend 2 hours with him, and he was always late. And so I'd go sit down with the executive coach because he was there anyway. And he told me I needed to get this job called the Vice President of Change. And he says it's not an official title, it's a mindset. And it's just someone looking around the business, curious, and just goes and stirs stuff up to try to make change happen. So if you feel like whoever said you're maybe in the wrong seat to lead CX, think about your title as maybe VP of Change for right now. Make yourself a business card, don't give it to anyone. But use that mindset as a tool to think through change through that context of CX and EX. And you go stir stuff up, and maybe one day you'll be sitting on a chair like this. So we've got a couple minutes left. There was one specific question for Mallory. Someone wants to hear about the listening tours that you mentioned.
Yes, we have some. I love these. So my team absorbed the customer tours last year. And when I say customer tours, it is mind-blowingly not a tour. This is a full production that we do to host new clients. But the idea behind it is, instead of me telling you, I've heard that a lot this week too. Instead of me telling you how great we are, let's pause this, not doing it over the phone. We're going to bring you to our headquarters. That way you get to be fully immersed in our culture. We're not just preaching it and saying it, they get to feel it. And then we curate little moments throughout that. I mean, they're seeing our facilities, they're meeting with the executives, but then we also curate based on why are we working with them. So my tour with Dan would be different than my tour with Carl. They're here for different reasons. And with that too is researching the client, getting that intel on the person. What do they like? Do they have families? And then making those special magic moments that matter. They coming in, this is silly stuff, right? It's easy, but they have kids. We're going to print a picture on a puzzle of the rendering of the project that we might get if they come to our site, right? So now they're going home with an activity for their child. Their child's going to open it up, and there's a rendering of the building with Power Design logoed on it. Those are those small little ideas that I think it costs $34. That's the moment that they're gonna stick and last, and yeah, very big deal. Big, huge company effort, and I have to give, if anybody ends up watching this, the amount of pieces in play at the office, the buy-in for those is also significant. It is weeks that can go into planning one of these with 7 or 8 different teams involved.
Oh, very cool. So what advice would you give to members of the audience today? You've been through some battles, you've had